Hello friends, welcome to the channel. This video is going to be about how I've found black and white to be really helpful, especially if you are somewhere near the beginning of your photographic journey. I'll go ahead and just preface this with a caveat. I am not a professional photographer. Rather, I'm more of like a photographic enthusiast, and I've been kind of dabbling in and out of the photography world for the better part of 7-8 years at this point. My photographic journey actually began, of all places, in a gadget review. I found this wonderful review by a writer, Craig Maud, who was reviewing the Panasonic GF1, this awesome compact little camera that had just come out. And I wasn't really interested at the time in, the camera itself, the specs and the features, but I was more interested in what he did with it. He took that camera on a 3-day trek through the Annapurna Valley in Nepal, and just the way he told his story, the portraits he took of the people he came across, the way he described the color rendering through some of the sunsets he came across. I just found the whole thing to be super inspiring. And after reading it a couple of times over, I'm like, man, I think I want to become a photographer. It's just kind of at the sweet spot of adventure and experience and gadgetry. And so I ended up buying that camera and just really cutting my teeth with it. I ended up going to like a community college course, or at local community college, and I learned the very basics of like exposure and aperture and shutter speed and all the other things that came with it. And I had a blast with that camera. And unfortunately, I took it on a work trip and left it on a train, and it got stolen. And so I only had it for about 7 months, but I decided to keep the habit up. I decided to upgrade to a Canon 5D camera, which is a DSLR, and I bought a couple of lenses with it. This kind of camera was different than the first one. To those who don't know anything about photography, this kind of looked like a professional camera. It had it's a big camera with like a long lens, and it looks like the kind of thing you'd see, a professional photographer rolling around with. And I had that for the majority of my time, in pursuit of photography, my learning journey. But if I'm being honest, I'd say the first year of having that camera, I learned a lot and I took a lot of photographs. But after about a year, it had kind of lost its luster for me. I think ultimately I just found it to be such a drag to like bring out and carry with me. It was heavy, it was kind of cumbersome. It had to be packed in its own little bag, and so like I'd have to bring my bag with me. When I would go to take photographs of people, they'd tighten up, and it just caused people to be really unnatural. And after that first year, it really just stayed in my closet for like years and years and years and years. And right around this time, iPhone photography started getting better and better and better. So like a lot of my interest went to the iPhone, and I still continued like learning things and developing that way. But not long ago, I came across, I would always be going back into the, photography waters on YouTube and other reviews. And I learned about the Leica Q2 monochrome, which is a camera that reminds me a lot of that first camera, the Panasonic GF1. It's small, it's compact, but it has a couple of things that are, really interesting. It's super constrained. It only has one lens. You can't change it out. It's a fixed focal length. It's a 28 millimeter wide angle lens, which is what your iPhone has. And so it can get a lot in the frame, but if you want to get detail on any particular subject, you actually have to get pretty close to it. You can't zoom in at all. It also can only shoot in black and white. It can't retain any color information in any way. And in fact, even the viewfinder, the thing that you look through to compose the shot, even that is only in black and white. And that actually had the effect of sort of training me to see the world in black and white. I can't tell you how many times I would go and think a photo would be interesting and realize that it was actually the colors that were appealing to me. The moment I looked through the IVF, I'd realize, actually this photo isn't quite as interesting as I thought it would be. And by, taking this camera and sort of living within its constraints, I actually found that it's just sort of, living under those constraints have just led to this explosion in creativity and I think photographic growth that I think is worth sharing. And so first off, just it's forced me to really focus on the fundamentals. You know, I can't count on a loud, bright red shirt carrying the scene. Instead, I have to focus on composition, leading lines, expression in faces, weird diagonals that come up in the natural world, natural frames that you know, lend themselves to interesting compositions. These are the things that, you know, require me to, you know, make interesting photos using those ingredients, and they just kind of lead to more interesting photos in general. You know, because I can't zoom, if I think that there's something interesting far away, I now have to sort of like really think about it. Like, is this worth, you know, walking over potentially 20 minutes just to get close to? Or might there be something closer to me that maybe I'm overlooking and missing? This camera has the ability to take, like, it has a macro mode, so I can kind of magnify an image. And, you know, sometimes the most interesting photos are actually just at your feet with, you know, interesting flowers that are in the area, or interesting cracks in concrete, that sort of a thing. You know, one thing that also has come out of this is that, like, I mean, I knew that I wouldn't be taking, I'd be taking different kinds of photos, but one thing that was interesting was that the golden hours of sunrise and sunset, which are usually like the hours that most photographers, myself included, would go out to because the light is soft and the colors are punchy and brilliant. Just think about a sunset, right? Those are totally worthless when you only shoot in black and white, because those colors are just lost. And so I remember when I would be carrying my big camera around, sometimes I would use the convenient excuse of like, oh, I missed the morning light, or I'm too busy to do the dusk hours when evening is coming. I'll just shoot another day. With shooting only in black and white, the bad part of the day, when the sunlight is harsh, you know, coming at high noon or in the late afternoon, those actually lend themselves to heavier, darker shadows, longer shadows, and just kind of harsh light leads to better contrast. And, you know, I think it's my taste perhaps, but like, I think that black and white images with high contrast just look fantastic. And so the result is that the ideal time to shoot has actually been most of the day, which has been really cool. That was a nice little side benefit. And then lastly, I would just say that my photos stand out in a crowd. I was recently at a wedding. I brought my camera with me. Once it was all done, my whole family like pooled all their photos into a shared photo album. I threw mine in there. And I mean, apart from them being black and white, which already makes them different, I just found that like those constraints, the black and white as well as the fixed angle or the fixed focal length, just made me, you know, get closer to action, take different perspectives, focus on different things. And I don't know, maybe I'm biased here, but I just felt that my images really stood out really differently than like the 6 versions of the same shot everyone else got. And I think that that's been really helpful. I think that's been part of how this growth has been happening. And so shooting in black and white has just kind of, even though it's constrained, it actually has opened up a lot of opportunity for me. I've actually found that I get out there more often because the time of the day to shoot is good. I've learned how to take better photos within those constraints. My composition is getting stronger. My eye is getting better trained. And I just end up with better keepers more often than I did before. And that's sort of a virtuous cycle, because every time that happens, I get, you know, a bit of a dopamine hit. It makes me want to go back out, right? I carry my camera with me more often than I ever have. And that has just, you know, made me put more reps in a shorter amount of time. It's sort of compressed my learning journey. And just the fun and rewarding nature is such that if I were to go back in time and, you know, talk to me just getting on this journey, I think what I would encourage myself to do is buy an old camera, like a digital camera. I don't know how to shoot film, but buy a digital camera that can go into black and white only mode, and basically force myself, put a prime lens on that doesn't zoom, probably 28 millimeters, and just focus on that for like 3 months straight. And I think that would have caused me to learn faster. It would have caused me to have better images, more of them earlier on, especially when you're first learning how to, you know, get into photography. Those early wins can just be so huge in sort of the path you take. It just would have flattened the learning curve a lot, and just that excitement would have been even better early on. And so anyway, that's what I wanted to share on this video. shooting in black and white is sort of an example of a system that I've adopted toward becoming a more creative and inspired photographer. That's sort of the identity that I'm pursuing with all of this. If you want another example of an identity that I was pursuing, I made a video recently, I'll link it here, about how I'm choosing to become a more high leverage spender by shaving with safety razors. So check that out. Thank you for joining the channel, or thank you for visiting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.